Thank you. If you're not familiar, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. With nearly 38 million members and offices in every state, plus Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, AARP works to strengthen communities and advocate for what matters most. Resilience and social benefit. Today's program focuses on livable communities, which is part of our age-friendly social change agenda. So, who's in the audience today? Put it in the chat. Put your first name, the city you're Zooming from. Thank you for joining us today. So, Vince, who do you see in the chat?
Hey, Jacqueline, I see all kinds of people in the chat from all over. I see Cecilia from Los Angeles and Grace from Venice Beach, a bunch of people from LA, Esther, Dory, Ricky, and we got some people from the Bay Area, Wendy and Susan. So people from all over the place. Oh, and Herndon, Virginia. Oh my gosh.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all for being with us today. So let's take a moment to answer our trivia question. And please put your answer in the chat. Can tea bags and coffee filters be composted? Yes, no, it depends. Vince, what are our answers? What do you see in the chat?
I see a yes, I see a no, and another yes, yes, it depends, yes, yes, yes. It looks like a lot of yeses and depends.
Okay. So the answer, can tea bags and coffee filters be composted, is it depends. While the used tea leaves and coffee grains are compostable, the tea bags themselves may not be. Make sure you check that the tea bags are made from biodegradable materials. Some bags are made with plastics and may have staples, which are not compostable. Paper coffee filters can be composted. Thank you everyone for participating in today's trivia. We are delighted to have all of you join us today and hope you have your coffee, your tea, or some other beverage that you can enjoy during our program. In an early salute to Earth Day, we're excited to bring you a program around recycling. Just one of the many ways that we can help our environment, our Earth. To our viewers who may be watching us from outside of California, please note we will be referencing some recycling practices and some recent new laws in California which may not apply to your local community. We usually have volunteer Vince King behind the scenes on Tea and Coffee Tuesdays, managing our tech. But today he's in front of the camera to interview our special guest. Vince is super passionate about recycling. Super passionate. Take it away, Vince.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So to get us warmed up today, we have 2 poll questions, and I want you to quickly submit your answers. So poll number 1, let's see, there it is. Who in your household is the most passionate recycler? I know in my household I am, but is it you? Is it your kids, your grandkids, spouse or significant other, or roommate, everyone, or other? I don't know what other would be, but who in your household is the most passionate recycler? And it looks like most of us who are on this program are the most passionate recyclers in their households. That's really great. I'm glad to hear that you're all interested in recycling, but hopefully we can get some other people in your households into that as well. All right, let's go with the second poll. So what makes recycling hard for you? There it is. So what makes recycling hard for you? Not knowing what to recycle, or do you not have an easy way to recycle, or it's not hard for you at all, or other? And I see, it looks like a lot of people are saying not knowing what to recycle, or it's not hard for you. So that's good information, because today we're going to be talking a little bit more about what you need to what is good to recycle and how to make it easier for you. So excellent poll answers. Thank you. So we hope our program today will leave you inspired to be the most passionate recycler in your household, and that we can address those obstacles that might be getting in your way. And we'll start the program now. So one of the eternal questions we will often ask is this recyclable? While we're standing over our garbage bins. And here to help answer these questions is our special guest, recycling and waste management expert, Mark Bowers. Now, Mark managed the Recycling and Solid Waste Division for the city of Sunnyvale, California for 29 years before retiring. He started his local government career as Mountain View, California's first recycling coordinator, and prior to that worked for 12 years starting and operating community-based recycling nonprofits in Boulder, Colorado, Arcata, California, and Bend, Oregon. Now, despite being freshly retired, he has been asked to work part-time on special projects relating to the collection franchise and the Sunnyvale Materials Recycling and Transfer Station, affectionately called Smart Station. Mark earned a BS in Natural Resource Planning at Humboldt State University and has lived in Sunnyvale since 1987. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks,
so, Mark, let's see, are you there?
I am here.
Awesome. Joyce, can you spotlight him? There we go. All right, so Mark, you've dedicated your entire career to this field of waste management recycling. I have to ask, what sparked such a passion, your commitment to this field of waste management and recycling?
Well, I'd have to say, Vince, it was sparked by my experience as a kid living in a remote part of Nigeria. And just to give you a little snapshot of how my life went, you look at me and you might think I'm just your standard issue old white guy, but I actually spent of the first 13 years of my life, the majority of that time living overseas in Bermuda and Nigeria, as an Air Force brat in Bermuda and as a missionary kid in Nigeria. And in Africa in particular, at that time, resources were scarce and we didn't waste anything. We lived in the bush for a time with a kerosene powered refrigerator because there was no electricity. And then even when we lived in town where there was supposed to be electricity and often wasn't, nothing was wasted. And I've had this conversation with a lot of other MKs, we call ourselves, missionary kids and diplomats kids who grew up in other resource scarce countries and come back to the United States, especially in my case at 13. Whoa, we are throwing away all this stuff in the United States. What is going on? This is crazy. And I was the kid who was going down the alley behind the house on garbage day, taking stuff out of the neighbor's garbage cans, and grabbed a bunch of comic books once, for instance, and stuck them in my parents' crawl space for 30 years, and they turned out to be worth $600 at retail.
Wow.
Some old 1940s comics that somebody had thrown away, and broken radios and, stuff that really was worthless, but I was 13 and didn't know the difference. Anyway, that's where it came from, was this deep sense that we were throwing away stuff we shouldn't. So going back to those MK roots, the way I phrase it is, I devoted my career to saving valuable natural resources from eternal damnation in the landfill. So there you have it.
That's amazing. Wow. So let's start off today with some recycling basics. So most of us are recycling glass bottles and aluminum cans and paper and boxes. So what else should we be recycling? What are some typical misunderstandings?
A lot of that depends on your local program, what they're able to take and process. So I think you want to listen carefully, at first ask and then listen carefully to what your local folks are telling you, because that's going to vary not just from state to state, but within California, depending whether you're northern, southern, which port your stuff gets shipped out, whether it's Long Beach or Oakland, and what local processing resources you have. So typical things I see that people don't pick up on that are recyclable are paper packaging. There's consistently good markets for things like boxes and cereal boxes and your junk mail and a lot of stuff that comes in the mail. And that's a real common thing that we see in the garbage that shouldn't be there. We have more problems with people putting stuff in the recycling cart that they shouldn't. That's a bigger problem also because it contaminates and has to be either sorted out or downgrades the value to the industries that are using that to make new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Wow, okay. So to our audience today, if you have questions about recycling, please feel free to put it in the chat and we'll try to get to those after the interview process. So please go ahead and put your questions in the chat. So Mark, we have some questions that people already asked us to share with you. So first question is, should we be rinsing cans and bottles before putting them into the recycling bin?
Rinsing isn't always necessary. I rinse my beer bottles and soda cans and things like that, just so they don't attract ants and stink up the cart. But you want to be careful, especially in our current drought conditions in California, to not be wasting water by getting too crazy with that. Really, if you can live with it for a week, a recycler can usually live with it. So it's, not worth, you don't want to be running stuff through the dishwasher and things like that.
Okay, so the recyclers actually have a way of processing this so that whatever's left in the bottle gets eliminated.
It's material specific. Plastics, you probably want to be a little more careful because there's less good plastic mass there, and a little bit of contamination is a larger proportion of the total weight. But yeah, especially for something that's going into a blast furnace or a glass plant, when they heat the glass.
Oh, you got muted.
I got muted.
There you are.
Yeah. Probably more important thing would be looking, if you're getting Amazon shipments and other stuff that gets sent in cardboard boxes, be sure to pull the plastic bags and the styrofoam out, the other non-paper parts of that before you put that in a recycling cart.
Okay. So speaking of that, can all plastics with the little 3 arrows go into the recycling bin? What about all that plastic crap?
Plastics are very complicated, and the short answer to your question is no, you can't just put all plastics in the bin, and that's one of the biggest problems we see in curbside recycling. And I brought with me what I call my bag of shame to give you a few examples. I have a bag, here's the bag, and in it I collect examples of both good and bad things, but a real common misunderstanding is that people think that anything with the little triangle on the bottom of it, this one has a 1 with a chasing arrow symbol, that's recyclable. This, in fact, these berry baskets and things like that. Here's a hummus container. These number 1 plastics are just not accepted by most recyclers. They're viewed as a contaminant that's acceptable at very low levels. What the recyclers want is things like bottles, like this is a number 2 milk jug that's got a great market. Your soda bottles, your water bottles are soft. If you do this, you see this is flexible, and it's much easier for the reclaimers to turn it back into a new product than these more rigid, what we call thermoforms. They're the same polymer as a plastic water bottle. It's called polyethylene terephthalate number 1, which you don't have to memorize that for the quiz. But it's formed different. You can see it's got a specific shape, and that shape lives on through the recycling process and prevents it from being used in the same way that a plastic bottle made from the same chemical polymer can be used. Hope that it's not too complicated, but plastics are difficult. There's also a vast amount of misinformation about plastics that's put out there by, wait for it, the plastics producers, Dow, DuPont. They want you to think that all plastics are recyclable because why? They make money selling plastics. They're not in the recycling business. They're in the business of taking natural gas out of the ground and making plastics and then selling you the plastics. So that's their business, and they put out a lot of information and spend a lot of money doing what we call greenwashing to make their products seem more environmentally beneficial than it is. So you got to be real careful to listen to those messages and sort through what's real and what's not real. So again, go back to your local service provider and ask them what they really want in the cart, and do what they tell you.
Okay, so if we wanted to find out what our local sanitation department accepts in their blue bins or their recycling bins, we should go to their website and find out what they can actually process in our facility, in our.
Yes, your city, your county, your garbage hauler, those would be the sources that you'd want to turn to.
Got it. Okay. How about those plastic grocery bags?
Well, in California, their single-use plastic grocery bags are illegal. There's a lot of heavy I would call them, they're supposedly reusable bags, but you'll get them at a lot of grocery stores. They aren't terribly helpful. We would really recommend using a durable cloth or a bag that's really designed to be used multiple times. I have some cloth bags we've been using at our house for 30, 40 years. They're very easy. It just saved thousands of plastic bags over time. And generally plastic bags in the recycling cart are a no-no everywhere. That's one of the universal rules. You don't want to see plastic bags in the recycling cart, either full of bottles, for instance. Some people will put their stuff in a plastic bag and throw the entire bag in the cart. That's bad. Putting plastic bags in the cart with the expectation that they'll get recycled is bad because they wind around the shafts of machinery and really plug up the machinery that processes that stuff. And so people who operate those types of facilities just don't want to see plastic bags coming in.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So a typical dilemma. What about pizza boxes? You know, they're sometimes a little stained with the grease from the cheese and pepperoni, and I love pizza, but I never know. Do I throw it in the trash? Do I tear it in half and throw the top part in the trash and the recycling and the greasy part in the trash? What do I do with those?
You're on the right track with that last idea. Yes. Pizza boxes are a real tough messaging thing, because if the pizza box isn't greasy, it's just cardboard basically, and that technically could go in your cart. But when we message out to the public that sort of fine-tuned information, all people hear is you can take pizza boxes. So we get pizza boxes, and guess what's inside them? There's pizza. I once looked in the cardboard bin at our middle school 2 blocks away, and somebody had some kind of a big event, and there were like 26 pizza boxes full of pizza in the cardboard recycling bin. And that kind of misunderstanding or just carelessness is real common. So to get back to the cleanliness point, which is important for those people downstream who are making new boxes from the old boxes, they don't want pizza showing up at the paper mill. So the stated rule is no pizza boxes. Now, what you said, if you're a careful listener, and I'll bet most people on this broadcast are, or else they wouldn't be here. Yes, if the box is dry, it doesn't have any grease on it, you can take the top or whatever part of it's not stained, and you can put that in your recycling bin. Some places also allow you to put them in the compost bin because they get shredded up and composted.
Oh, okay. How about to-go coffee cups?
Pretty much a universal no on that.
Really?
The to-go coffee cups have a waterproof barrier inside them. You might not see it on the outside, but it's there, or else the fluid would just leak onto your hand and you'd have a burned hand. And so they're pretty much a no. The big companies like Starbucks have taken several runs at trying experiments to run them through a paper mill with special processing equipment. And it hasn't been a total failure, but it's generally not a good thing. Starbucks has recently announced that they're going to emphasize reusable cups. They're going to start, I don't know if it's charging extra or giving you a discount, but they're going to really push the concept of reusing the coffee cups. One reason recently is that the COVID problem of supply chain problem has produced a shortage of coffee cups in the US. And there are some stores you'll go to, say a Starbucks, that won't have a certain size cup. They'll say, well, I can't give you a grande because we're out of cups, literally. And it's a pretty big problem across the country, especially for the smaller independent coffee shops. So they really do appreciate it, I think, if you bring your own cup in, because they're having trouble sourcing cups, and the price on them in the last 6 months has really gone through the roof.
Wow, that's really interesting. And how about the plastic lids that they put on the coffee cups? Can we recycle
those?
Those
are not recyclable as a rule. And so I try to remember to specify no lid, please, if I am getting a to-go cup. Most of the time I try to carry a little durable cup with me, fits in my briefcase, and it sits in the car. and I'll take that in the store and use that. And I have these two we've had for 20 years now. We bought them for our daughters and they never used them when they were little. But I went, oh, those are good. I've got one in each car, and I've saved, probably hundreds of single-use cups by just carrying a cup in the car.
That's great. How about use aluminum foil or those big catering aluminum pans?
Those can be recycled. It's a little lower grade material than your aluminum cans. And the important thing there would go back to cleanliness. They need to be, that's something you would want to use a little energy and a little water on to get cleaned up before you put it in the recycling cart.
Okay. Now, how about light bulbs and batteries? I know those are sometimes like you're not supposed to throw them in the garbage, but then what are we supposed to do with them?
Okay. Well, today we've got 3 different kinds of light bulbs running around out there. You got the old style incandescents, and those can just be thrown in the garbage. They don't go in your recycling, they go in the garbage. The next generation was the compact fluorescents, or any kind of fluorescent. Those in California are considered hazardous waste because there's mercury inside the tubes. So you want to save those and carefully transport them to a place that'll accept them. The compacts, a lot of times Home Depot and Target and Lowe's, some of the big box stores will accept those at the entrance. They'll have places to drop those, and batteries. The tubes are a little harder sometimes, but your household hazardous waste facilities will accept those oftentimes. And at our transfer station, the Smart Station, we take all of those from the public. The third kind is the LEDs, trying to remember the acronym.
Light emitting diode?
Something along those lines,
Something
yes.
like that.
And those are an electronic circuit that in California, again, because it's got a circuit board in it, it's technically hazardous waste. So you want to take those to the Target, Home Depot, Lowe's type of outlet, and not just throw those in the trash.
Got it.
There's
Wow.
a complicated answer to a simple question.
Yeah. Okay. And the same thing with all those batteries. They need to go to a special place.
Household batteries. Now, here in Sunnyvale, we handle the household batteries at the curb. We put them in a Ziploc bag, set them on your recycling cart, and that's probably an increasingly common practice. But again, it gets very local. You want to check with your local county, city trash hauler and ask them what to do with those.
Right.
The really big problem with batteries is the rechargeable lithium ion type batteries. They're found in vaping devices, cell phones, all kinds of things these days, hand tools. And those are a real fire hazard in the processing facilities like garbage transfer stations and recycling centers. And we're pushing hard at the state level and trying to get some legislation passed that will give the manufacturers responsibility for getting those back so they don't end up in the garbage. There's a facility to our north here in the Bay Area in San Carlos, and it's had several serious fires. I mean, multi-million-dollar fires in their garbage processing area. And I've seen video from there with a forklift driving over a cell phone, I think it was, and a big explosion of sparks, and set the facility on fire. So it's very important to keep those battery containing devices out of the garbage and out of the recycling stream. They should go to an e-waste recycler, of which there are many in California.
Yeah, that's really important for the safety of all the people who work in those facilities, is to make sure that we don't throw those away and cause fires. Okay, so changing tacks a little. So, those of us who do a lot of recycling of aluminum cans and glass and plastic bottles, California has the California redemption value on it, printed 5 cents, and we actually pay that 5 cents every time we buy those products. So how do we make sure we get the best rates for those? Are the recycling centers that do it by weight actually giving us the full California redemption value?
It's a complicated system. The way I understand how the weight system works is that there is an average level of contamination that's reflected in the per pound that they give you back. In other words, people will put through, say, a wine bottle or liquor bottle, which aren't currently covered by deposits. We're working on that in Sacramento. There's apparently legislation coming out that'll add those items. But to guard against overpaying, they have sort of an average contamination rate, let's call it, that knocks the per pound price down. If you're really interested in getting back every single nickel and dime, the law allows you to request that they pay you count by count, up to 50 per trip. So if you take small quantity in, say count mine please, up to 50, they'll give you exactly what the 5 or 10 cents per container adds up to. So
Okay.
that's a little inside baseball trick for you. And
Although they'll probably hate you because they're going to have to spend more time counting those out.
well, they have to follow the rules just like you have to follow the rules. So it's okay. But if you've got, bags and bags, it's probably not worth your time to bother with that and to just, give them the bulk amount and take what the
Sure.
weight-based formula gives you.
Yeah. All right. So let's take some questions from the chat. Do we have, let's see, I'm going to look through the chat and see what kind of questions we have. Okay. Food boxes with wax paper and food remnants. I think we covered that. Plastic bags. I think we covered that. When in doubt, should we put a plastic item in trash?
I would say yes. Now, there are some supermarkets that collect them at the door, and some of them actually may recycle those if they're clean. So you can save them, and this would apply to bubble wrap and the other miscellaneous film plastics that you get, say, in stuff that's shipped to you or that you take off products that you buy. It's got to be clean though. And I've brought an example. This is from my bag of shame of why I make those qualifying comments. This bag here has a paper sticker on it. That's a contaminant. And plastics are so light that the weight of that sticker is a very high percentage of the total weight of what I'm holding here. So to recycle a film plastic item, you really have to peel the plastic off or cut off that area. That's the problem with those blue and white Amazon envelopes that they put on them. These are recyclable. Well, to recycle it, technically it is recyclable as film plastic, but you have to cut off the address label. Who's going to do that in any significant numbers? Not too many people will do that. So that's part of the greenwashing thing. And so sometimes Amazon sends them in your stuff in a brown paper envelope with say a starch cushion, and that's fine. That can go in your recycling cart, but the plastic envelopes are a problem.
Got it. Okay. How about caps? Should caps be left on containers or taken off?
Typically, and this will again vary a little bit locally, I would take them off. And the main reason I would say take them off is that if you don't take the cap off, people tend to leave the liquids in the bottle, and that's a mess. So you'll get, a 20-ounce bottle of Pepsi that's got 16 ounces of Pepsi in it. That's a big sticky mess in a recycling processing plant. So taking the cap off induces people to dump out the liquids and keep their stuff clean and dry.
Okay. Tortilla bags, rice bags.
Have to look at them to see them. I think tortilla bags from the supermarket are usually this kind of film plastic. So they're not particularly desirable in a recycling cart, but might go in with the paper bags if they're, or the plastic bags at the grocery store entrance if there's nothing stuck to them. And if there's no tortillas left inside them also.
Obviously, yes. How about the black plastic from frozen food?
Well, I happen to have a sample of that here in my bag of shame.
Yep.
This is let's see, it's marked as a number 5, polypropylene. And these are generally not accepted in recycling or desired. 2 problems at least. One is that this contains, well, 3 problems. One is this contained food, and most people wouldn't clean it out well enough to make it acceptable. Number 2 is that the plastic processing equipment in these recycling facilities uses light beams. They'll shine a light on the object, and what bounces back to the emitter tells it what kind of plastic it is. It goes through some software that separates the 1s from the 3s from the 5s and so on. And the light in this case is absorbed by the black object and doesn't return. And so the machine can't really see it. In machine terms, it can't view what this is. And so it wouldn't get recycled and get kicked out probably with the rejects, or it would go on into a spot where it shouldn't be. The third item is that that clear or translucent, like the milk jug. This is a valuable plastic because it has no tint to it, no coloring. And so this can be made into any color downstream. The black plastic is fixed. It cannot, you can't remove the tint once it's there. So it can't be made into anything other than black. So it really limits its flexibility for the plastics manufacturer that's trying to turn this. You know, they can maybe turn this into a car, not a bumper, but the part that goes below the bumper where nobody sees it, where color isn't a concern. But when you have something where you're trying to control and make this blue or red or white or just natural color again, the untinted stuff is more desirable in the marketplace.
Okay, but we should look at our local sanitation department's website to figure out if they want that or not, right?
Yeah, and 99% of the time they're going to say no if they're familiar with the markets and how things work out in the real world.
Okay, how about those paper milk cartons?
That's an interesting question. I happen to bring, let's see if I can get this in focus here. This is our split cart for Sunnyvale. Let's try get you a view of what's in the container side of my cart. And forgive the grime on the outside. It can assure you that the contents of the cart are cleaner than the cart itself. But you can see there's a milk carton out there. Yep. And in Sunnyvale, we have special processing equipment with a group called the Carton Council that separates the cartons out and recycles them separately. You can see some of the other stuff. There's a big tequila bottle. How did that get in there? And all kinds of other stuff in there that we accept here in Sunnyvale. So that's definitely not normal. I would say you again want to ask your local officials if they accept cartons. And the trick with the milk cartons is they have a multi-layer system. There's a foil layer, a plastic layer, and a very high quality paper layer. And that's what the paper mills are after. So they have special equipment in a few paper mills in the world. One's in Georgia, there's one in South Korea. And so we'll accumulate a truckload quantity of those, which takes months, even at the scale we're working at, and then ship that container load to that particular paper mill. And if you don't have the volume of the processing equipment on this end, and the connection with the mill on the other end, then it's hard to recycle, but it can be done.
Got it. Okay. I see a question regarding organic material. We're going to hold off on that because we'll get to organics a little bit later. How about K-cups that say they're recyclable?
I don't know of anybody that really wants K-cups. And I know that in my world of recycling people, nobody uses Keurig stuff. They're very much disfavored. There are some that allow you to put your own coffee, provide the coffee and put it in a reusable K-cup. And that would be what I would recommend. But I think the disposable ones, there's virtually no market for those.
Okay. How about the pump tops of soap dispensers?
I would say that's generally a no. And what I hear is we're getting into the tiny details, which is a good thing. We're going to be talking about organics as we're talking real small scale questions, where organics is a very high scale, large scale issue that's very important these days.
Okay. So we talked a bit about, those three arrows with the number inside. Which ones are generally the most recyclable?
I would say number 1 and number 2 bottles. And that include, when I say bottles, you'd have seen in my cart, there's a big Tide laundry jug out there. That's very desirable. The other way of describing it is something with a neck. And if you've got a neck there at the top of the bottle, that's what's really desired. And I can't explain the technical side of that because I don't understand it myself, but that's what the plastics folks tell us. A lot of, I think that's the thing a lot of people miss in the plastic recycling is shampoo bottles, detergent bottles, other types of plastic product bottles. They're number 1s and number 2s. Number 3s are just bad news all around. That's polystyrene. That's a PVC. That's a contaminant to all the other plastics. Number 5s, some people do accept number 5s. And if your jurisdiction tells you, give us 1 through 7 or 3 through 7, what's going on there is they're trying to simplify the message. So you don't have to get into the 1s, 2s, 3s, 5, and just give it all to us, and then we'll sort out the stuff we don't want. And that was for a long time the fallacy we fell into with trade with China. People were shipping large bales of unsorted plastics to China, and that eventually became an environmental problem in China. And that's why they kind of cut off that trade. You can't do that anymore because it was making a huge mess in China, and stuff was getting in the rivers and the ocean and getting burned in piles and making air pollution. And so sorting at the source, at the home, at the business is a much more effective way of keeping that system working correctly.
Okay. Now, I think, well, somebody had a question about used paper towels. I think we'll get to that in the composting thing. How about shredded paper?
First of all, it's important to shred your confidential documents. If it has your social security number, bank records, things like that, very important to shred that material. We once did a project at our landfill here in Sunnyvale where we dug up stuff that had been buried for 30 years. And everything we found that was paper was perfectly readable after 30 years underground in a landfill. So documents from Lockheed Martin, which is a big defense contractor, nothing, secret, but their payroll records and stuff like that. It was all there. A copy of Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. Is it Tolstoy or Dostoevsky? I forget my Russian authors, but paperback copy, perfectly readable. I could have stood there and read it, except it smelled really bad. So that stuff doesn't decompose underground in the way that we imagine in our brains that it does. So shred that important stuff. Don't shred stuff that doesn't need to be shredded, because it does devalue the material a little bit for recycling. The paper mills aren't real crazy about shredded stuff, partly because people shred photos and other plastics and other stuff that's not recyclable in with the shredded paper.
Oh, and so the shredded paper, would that go in our recycle bin then?
If it's clean, what I do is I put mine in a brown paper grocery bag, tape off the top so it doesn't blow, and put that in the paper side of my recycling tray.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay. How about medicine pill bottles? So one of our viewers is saying that, the pill bottles actually have their prescription name and all that stuff on the outside. So how do you dispose of the bottle safely? Say, you've gotten rid of the medication.
Well, what I do is, even if I'm throwing them in the garbage again, I would peel those labels off to protect my private information about the meds I'm taking. And I will tell you, in all honesty, I'm not quite sure what the answer is. I have heard people say we don't want pill bottles, but I have never heard why. Whether it's their size, they're very small and they fall through the sorting equipment and end up in the reject pile, or if they're worried about residue from some of them. Say if they had opioids in them, maybe there's some concern about passing that on down as the stuff is reprocessed. But I have heard that recyclers do not desire the small pill bottles, but definitely get your information off of them. Just no small trick sometimes.
Yeah. Somebody was asking about the plastic packaging used for all kinds of items like toys, tools, medications. The kind of packaging you need scissors to open.
I throw those in the garbage. There's no market currently for that material.
Plastic medical syringes without the needle.
I would put those in the garbage. Yeah, typically medical stuff is not desirable in recycling processes.
Okay, medications, pills, and ointments.
Very good question. It's a really big problem of accumulation of pills, especially for older folks like myself. And there are systems in most jurisdictions in California now that are required by law, where the pharmaceutical folks set up drop points. Typical places you'll find these will be, say, at a sheriff's office or a substation, police department, fire station. You can, again, check with your local authorities on where to take those used out-of-date pharmaceuticals. That can be a real problem. If those get accumulated around the house, people can mix up the pills and all sorts of bad stuff. You want to keep your pill inventory to a minimum.
Yeah, and I've heard that some people flush them down the toilet, which is a big no-no.
No, that's a bad one. Yeah.
Yeah, because that contaminates our water system. Okay, so I'm sorry, we can't answer every single question that was posted in the chat. We got to jump over to the compost topic. So January 1st, 2022 marked the beginning of a new California law. And we've got a couple of quick videos to summarize. So Tisha, you're going to show the videos, please.
On January 1st, the state required all cities and counties to start up programs that provide organic waste collection for things like yard trimmings and food scraps. Many already do. Lots of houses, apartment, and condo complexes have green bins. Well, if your home doesn't, just wait.
You should see those bins showing up within the next year.
So what about larger apartment and condo complexes? We'll get to you in just a minute. Local governments are now required to provide houses and small apartment or condo complexes green bins for curbside pickup, or let you haul away your organics yourself. Either way, it's each family's responsibility to sort through your waste. So what do you put in that green bin? CalRecycle says generally it's green landscaping waste, wood, paper, carpet, textiles like natural fiber clothing, and other organics. The biggie is food waste.
If you think about all of your food waste from eggshells to banana peels, that's what we're really focused on. 56% of the waste that we throw away right now is organic waste.
The state's goal here is to try to basically compost everyone's scraps or turn them into biofuel. That way they're not just rotting away in a landfill. Okay, so what about larger apartment or condo complexes, especially those that currently only offer rubbish or recycling? If you live in a place with 5 or more units, the landlord or property manager is now required to enroll in a curbside pickup service, or start collecting your organic waste separately and haul it away for you. Just like homeowners, families in apartments and condos are the ones who are required to start sorting through the waste. We wondered, what happens if you don't? Well, nothing now, but you could be fined starting in 2024.
I don't anticipate needing a major penalty program because I think Californians, they want to recycle.
The state says local governments like cities and counties are responsible for specific rules and rollout throughout 2022. So be on the lookout for information from your local recycling department.
Yeah, I think we have one more video coming. And we'll wait a second while she's queuing up that video.
And why the state says it's so important for all. California's new organic waste recycling law went into effect January 1st, but there are definitely still a lot of questions surrounding it. So here's what you need to separate and why the state says it's so important for all of us to do our part.
You've been recycling clean paper and plastic for years, but now every house, apartment, and condo complex and business is required to recycle organic waste too. Many have been given an extension to the law that went into effect January 1st, but within 2 years, those will all end. So how do you separate that organic waste in your kitchen?
That's where these bins come in. Some trash companies will give them to residents for free. Others will have to go out and buy one on their own.
Many are worried this food waste will smell, but venting on top lets moisture evaporate, reducing odor, causing bacteria. They're also easy to clean, and the lid locks, preventing flies from getting inside. And if you drop it, nothing spills.
So what are you supposed to put in here? Well, let's go through my trash for some answers.
We're looking for food scraps and soiled paper. Dirty plastic trash bag is still trash.
Eggshells, that can go in there. Old onion peels, oh, and a green bean, that can go in there. Banana peel, definitely go in there. More beans with coffee grinds and onions in there. Lots of paper towels. We use a lot of paper towels.
Got green beans, onions, eggs.
Oh, a whole bunch of coffee grinds. Those can all go in there. Oh, that's a string cheese wrapper. I don't think that can go in there yet. That's a COVID test. That can go in there. All right, so this is the last little bit. How did we do? Let's check it out. This right here is my trash can from inside, and you can see there's only a couple of things in here now. It's pretty much empty. And the bin, I'd say a good 80% of the trash that was in my trash can is now in this bin, which means that's 80% less stuff heading to the landfill.
And eventually it will be turned into compost to grow more food.
And for all the new laws now in effect and to read more about them, we've put a list on our website. Go to cbs8.com. California's new organic waste recycling law.
All right, Mark. So we've got that law now in California. So what does collecting our organic waste look like for the average household? And what's okay to put in that composting bin? I think we saw a few examples there. So what's okay to put in there and what should we not put in there?
Well, the first and most important point to be made is that taking organics, which covers a wide variety of products and types of material. I mean, the way the state defines organics, a 2x4 is organics. Your cotton shirt is organics. So in residential terms, we're talking food scraps. And you'll notice I'm not going to use the term food waste because for two reasons. One is something's not waste until you waste it, which sounds stupid, but think about it. If there's something you can make of it down the road, it's not waste, it's a resource. And food scraps are a resource that can be handled and processed into usable products in a number of ways, including compost. And it's very important to broaden our minds beyond thinking of compost as the only outcome. And as we were discussing before the session opened up, Southern California in particular has a real shortage of composting capacity, and composting facilities that handle food scraps are very difficult to site and very difficult to permit, and they're very expensive to build. So anything that can divert food scraps to other outcomes besides compost are also valuable tools. And one good example is sewage treatment digesters can take pre-prepared, pre-processed food scraps and pump that in with the sewage sludge and digest it, which means that anaerobic bacteria work on it, just like they work on garbage in a landfill, but in a more controlled setting. You capture that methane that's produced by the digestion and then make electricity from it. That's a very common outcome.
Wow.
There's a lot of, or has been a lot of excess digester capacity around the state because you usually oversize your sewage treatment plant because the last thing you want to do is run out of room to take sewage, because that's a really bad problem. So that's another outcome is anaerobic digestion at a sewage treatment plant, or even dedicated food scraps anaerobic digesters or dry digesters. Those are starting to be built also. You can also make it into a fertilizer ingredient. And here in Sunnyvale, we run our stuff through a process that allows it to go to 3 different outcomes. One is it can be turned into a hog food ingredient, depending on markets. It has gone to sewage treatment plant digesters, as I mentioned, and it can be made into a fertilizer ingredient also and used over in the Central Valley in agriculture. So that's the one message I want to get out there. Broaden your mind beyond compost. Backyard composting is also important. And I think a lot of folks on this group here today are probably backyard composters. That's very important because that reduces the cost to your city to 0 because you're handling it and using it yourself and provides you with a valuable product you can use in your garden. We have a worm compost bin at our house with red wigglers and produces a very, very nice compost material and just literally eats our food scraps, the pre-plate stuff, the stuff that doesn't have salt or oils and no meat or dairy can go in there. So let me show you what the Sunnyvale process is. And I mentioned we're a little different, and this is going to really vary. Let's see, get that in the picture. You see the left side of that garbage cart. The black side is garbage. The left side, the yellow lid, is where the food scraps go. So it gets picked up by the same truck that picks up the garbage. It has a 2-compartment body on the truck, and it's all kept separate throughout collection and processing. And the important thing here is that in a home, by weight, 1/3 of what homes put out for collection, whether it's multifamily or single family, 1/3 is food scraps in California. People have a hard time wrapping their head around that number, but it's true. We've confirmed it with local sampling and statewide. And it's because food scraps are mostly water, and so they're heavy, dense, and it produces a very big impact. So we captured, when we rolled out this program in residential setting, we reduced the amount of garbage going to landfill by 18% with that one move, which is a lot in garbage roll. So yard trimmings, most people were already doing yard trimmings and diverting those from the garbage. Food scraps is the next frontier, and there's a lot to be gained in terms of reducing the mass of what goes to the landfill, the weight, as well as these being the things that in a landfill get eaten by those anaerobic bacteria, which produce methane. And then if it's not controlled properly, that can escape from the landfill and contribute to climate change.
Got it.
That's the high level strategic approach. Now, how it's implemented in your particular neighborhood or jurisdiction is going to vary depending on the local tools that are available, local processing facilities and markets. And that's all still being developed. Most of the cities in California were not in compliance with that new state regulation in January, like we were all supposed to be. So it's a moving process where the state understands they've thrown out this real challenging task for the cities and counties, and that they're still working on getting up to speed and making those changes. But it's a big deal.
Yeah, so I've noticed that. I mean, I live in Los Angeles and we're the largest city in California, and we have not heard anything about how our sanitation department is going to handle this new composting law. So I guess we have until 2024 before we get fined for it. But, you know, I see a lot of questions in the chat that we unfortunately don't have time to get to, but it sounds like we just need to keep monitoring what our local sanitation departments put out in terms of messaging about this law.
Okay. And I see there's always questions from the public. The other reason we don't call it food waste is because when you say food waste, it triggers a psychological response in people. A lot of people have deep guilt from childhood about the notion of wasting food. You know, clean your plate because there's starving people in country X, Y, or Z. And so it stimulates a lot of negative psychological feedback for folks. So we steer away from the term waste and we talk about food scraps. Everybody makes food scraps. You don't eat the stems on your broccoli. You don't, you know, there's stuff you create while you're preparing your meals that no one eats and that it's got to go somewhere. And so into a food scraps recycling mode is where you take it.
Yeah. Well, Mark, thank you so much for all of the information that you provided today. And to the audience that put so many questions in the chat, I'm so sorry that we can't get to them all. We are just about out of time today. But Mark, thanks again for all of your information, and maybe we'll have you back on our program sometime to talk about more of these questions and answers. Jacqueline, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, ooh, that was interesting. I learned a lot, and I'm guilty of a few things, but we won't go into those. So before we close out, we'd like to take a quick pulse with the poll. Recycling warriors, check all that apply to you. I feel confirmed that I'm recycling things correctly. Today I learned about more things I can recycle and compost. I'm going to share this information with others, and I'd like to get more involved in community recycling and composting effort. Wow. A lot of people learned that they can recycle a bunch of things, and they're going to share this information with others. That's wonderful. So thank you all for participating today. We've all learned a lot, and I hope you feel encouraged and inspired to utilize these recycling and composting tips every day. So please take a minute, and also please take a minute to share some feedback by taking our survey so that we can continue to improve our program. If you look into the chat, you'll see the link. So we have some upcoming events. Our next Tea and Coffee Tuesday, our next Tea and Coffee Tuesday is May 10th at 9 a.m. Herb Your Enthusiasm. We'll be chatting with Master Gardener who will teach us how to grow herbs indoors and outdoors while managing the California drought and provide some tips on cooking with herbs. We also have Prepare to Care coming up Tuesday, April 19th at 10 a.m. If you're caring for a family member, you will get some good tips on how to connect, exchange tips and advice, and learn about other resources available to you and your loved ones. We also have a film screening and discussion of a newly released film, All the Lonely People, Thursday, April 21st at noon. Please join us for that. Register at CVent. And of course, our ongoing series for Soul Steppers, Tuesdays from 6 to 7 a.m. Pacific time. Our free fitness class online to help you meet your optimal health and wellness goals. Register as Soul Steppers. And of course, our ongoing new series, our quarterly series, Piggy Bank Essentials with Martin. We're doing part 2, The Moneymaker. Martin is a member of AARP's financial resilience team and will distinguish the differences between explain how to knowing ourselves will help us better manage our money. Are you a spender, saver, or grower? Please join us for that on Thursday, June 30th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So should you have any questions before the next Tea and Coffee Tuesday, please contact our AARP staff, Atisha Jones, and she will answer as many of your questions as she can and take your feedback. Again, a big thank you to our guest, Mark Bowers. I could have listened to that for a couple of hours. That was really interesting and informative. A thank you to our interviewer, Vince King, and our moderator, Vince King, our volunteer production crew, Olivia Payne-Tinson, our tech specialist, Joyce Howard, our wonderful AARP staff, and of course, all of you. Thank you for being here today. Again, I'm Jacqueline Cole, your host. Thank you for joining us today. This concludes our program. And please take a minute, though, to share your feedback. The link is in the chat. Have a wonderful day.